Welcome back to Shawn and Maya in the morning on this Wild and Out Wednesday. On Shawn and Maya on Sports Chicago. We just got off our first segment with Joseph Phillips, who's wilding out today.
So,
Top of the morning
no,
segment.
I had this thought. So, new segment, QAnon Joe. So, remember that song, Cotton Eye Joe?
Uh-huh.
You should take it and modify it and call it QAnon Joe.
I love it. Oh, that's awesome.
Oh,
That's
man.
awesome. Joseph, you better listen to it because you got a new segment. You got a lot of work to do.
Conspiracies of Joe. I love it. Okay.
Oh, that's crazy. But we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk a little Blackhawks hockey. So we're going to bring in our guy. He's a good friend of the program. He's been rocking with us for a while now. He is one of the co-founders of the Rink Official. You can find him on Twitter at my favorite freaking Twitter handle ever at Puckin' Hostel. I love it. Guys, let's bring out Jeff Osborn. Jeff, what's up, Papa? How are you?
What's going on, guys?
Hey.
That's gonna be a hard segment to follow.
Well, you should just know off the top, Blackhawks lost because of
LeBron.
He's gonna get Jeremy Colleton fired, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
his next coach he's working on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, yesterday was a tough one. 4-3 in a shootout. Overtime, 5-minute overtime, couldn't even handle it. One of the things that we're seeing from this Blackhawks team, they're playing a lot better than I thought they would be. We didn't have a goalie of substance. I mean, you had Colin Delia before the season started, and we were wondering what was going to happen between the pipes. Kevin Lankinen has decided to step up and said, you know what? Hold my beer. Let me show you what I can do. They're playing a lot better with young guys. Him, with Suter, with Kurashev, even Strome from last year. How are they doing this? Staying just literally 2 points off the lead in the Central. How are they doing this?
Well, I mean, these young players, some of them are good. I mean, let's be honest. Some of them are pretty good.
That helps.
They're not. I'm not going to go out on a limb here and say they're great, but Kevin Lankinen has played way better than anyone could have expected at this point in time. He's up there in the league lead for like goals saved above average, which is unheard of. But he's only 6-7 games into his career too. I mean, let's wait until the rest of the league gets the book on this guy and start. A lot of these guys have never seen Kevin Lankinen before. That said, he has played very well behind this defense, who gives up a lot of shots.
One of the biggest things that I'm seeing is these young guys, and I think it falls in line with Colleton. Remember when Colleton was hired, he was a great communicator, and people down in Rockford said he was awesome, and he was able to get the best out of those guys, and because of his communication style, now he's still got a young group of guys, and it seems like what he did in Rockford, he's starting to do here with all these young guys. They're not necessarily getting as many wins as we want, but they're really competitive going into overtime, going into shootouts. Is this the kind of team that Colleton works best with younger players?
Probably. Corey Crawford and Brent Seabrook were drafted about the same time that Jeremy Colleton was drafted into the NHL. So if you're looking at a guy across from you who's your coach, who is the same age as you, or maybe younger than you, that could be a problem. Now, you don't have Brent Seabrook around. Jonathan Toews, who's now 31, 32, he's out of the lineup. You only have Duncan Keith left and Patrick Kane as the veterans. And so, there's some younger players who are going to, take to this kind of younger coach who seems to relate to them a little bit. But that being said, I mean, they still have a lot of problems. They still give up a lot of shots. They're kind of just playing a run and gun, run and shoot. I kind of equate it to a run and shoot offense. They can score some goals, but you're going to give up a lot of goals and give up a lot of chances. Lankinen's going to hang in there for a while, but eventually these stats are going to come back down to earth. And, he's not going to have a .957 save percentage for the entire season. He's just not that. He would have been in the NHL 4 years ago if that was the case, if he was really that good. So, things are going to normalize. They're kind of playing above above the water right now. And, but, enjoy it while you can, because, any moment the wheels can come off the cart.
Might as well give him the Vezina Trophy after the .957 save average.
I mean, that's shades of Ed Belfour. That's what Ed Belfour did in his rookie season. The Calder, the MVP, the Vezina. Like, I don't think Kevin Lankinen is that good, but I don't want to take anything away from him. He's been a good player.
Well, it's the best they got. So I guess we're going to have to go with that because there is obviously no other option at this point. I mean, I came into the season not really having high expectations. Obviously, with Tays not being there, them being very young. Granted, last year ended well above my expectations. I mean, it really did. I was hoping they would take something at least from that series against Vegas and learn to be a bit more physical. Don't know if that rubbed off enough, so to speak. But what do you think about, because of COVID with the realignment, is this possibly even advantageous for them considering, I mean, granted, they do have the likes of Tampa Bay and Dallas in there, which doesn't help, but can that be something that could be favorable for them kind of seeing those same type of those teams throughout the season repeated?
Yeah, I mean, well, Detroit is one of the worst teams in the NHL, and they're in, and that they got their two wins against Detroit. So that's gonna help them out. I think it's 8 games that they're gonna play against Detroit, and you got to think that they're gonna win at least 3/4 of them. So that's gonna help. The rest of the teams, some of them came out slow. Carolina's kind of a high flying team. You saw that early in the first period, and then they kind of took their foot off the gas, and the Blackhawks were able to tie it up and then keep it close. Some teams probably are underestimating the Blackhawks too. They're still, if you look at them, their statistics and everything, they're probably still in the bottom third of the league. So maybe they're not the 31st worst team in the league, but they're probably going to, finish in the bottom 5, I would think still. But you know what? Enjoy it. It's fun. It's fun right now. You don't want to see them lose every single game. They've been competitive, even though they lose in overtime and shoot out some of these games. At least they've been competitive. You don't want to go out there and turn the TV on and watch the Blackhawks get smashed 6-1. So, this is about the best we could have hoped for at this point in time.
Guys, we're joined by Jeff Osborn, Mr. Puck and Hostile himself from the Rink official, talking a little Blackhawks hockey right here on Shawn and Maya on Sports Zone Chicago. As I said, talk to me about this rookie class, a group of youngsters. I'm really liking this. With Kurashev, scored again last night. With Suter, scored a hat trick for his first 3 goals. How soon can you think their play can develop? Because it started off pretty good, and my hope was that if they can hang around, because they're only 2 points out of the off the lead in the division, and granted, small early in the season, how much of a contribution can these guys be with Tays, with the DeBrincat, with guys who can literally light up the net as they get accustomed to the NHL season? Because most, these guys, Kurashev and Suter are rookies. How much can they contribute and make this team possibly win the division? Do you think they can win the division?
No, they can't. But that's not what their intention was this year. Their intention this year was to play young kids, to develop players, which they've never done in Stan Bowman's era. They've never developed young players. So, they wanted to develop some young players. You got Lankinen, they're trying with Malcolm Subban. They're trying with, Kurashev, Beaudin. They're kind of cycling these players into the lineup to kind of see what they have. And this is kind of the year to do it, where you have the taxi squad. We already told the rest of the league that you're really not going to be able to compete much. So let's see what you got. But that being said, I don't know that any of those players are really top-notch players. I mean, Suter, he had that hat trick in the game against Detroit, but what has he done since? He's had a couple assists, but he hasn't really scored any goals.
Right.
And that was against Detroit, who's a bad team. And Kurashev, he's up there in the near the top of leading the Blackhawks in scoring. So he looks like he might be the real deal as far as that goes. Goalies, you got Lankinen, you got, Colin Delia hasn't really gotten a fair shake. He kind of got, he got thrown in there against Tampa and got shelled. And then he hasn't really been shown anything since, because he hasn't been given an opportunity. Subban, he was given an opportunity. He hasn't, he went in there and didn't screw up, which is, the best you can hope for out of a young player at this point in time. And then, on defense, you got Beaudin, you got Boqvist. Boqvist is not, despite what some of the media might be feeding you, Boqvist does not look good. Like, he's in trouble as far as his development goes. But you got some other young players in that look pretty good. Ian Mitchell has held his own. So, a lot of the young players have shown that they can hang in the NHL. Where they go from there, I don't know. But don't expect them to make the playoffs. Don't expect them to, do anything really that's that, special, I would say, at the end of the day, because they're going to start facing teams that are really good, and it's going to, and with the compressed schedule, it hurt them.
But isn't that going to be a good litmus test for them if they're able to win some of those games against the good teams?
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't that be a litmus test and actually get that development that you were talking about? What Bowman and crew want, because I mean, again, we still have a puncher's chance, in every game because of the offensive firepower we have. But isn't that what can't we see them winning a few games against those tougher teams?
Oh, I sure you're gonna get some teams that are probably gonna underestimate them. But like I said, as the book gets out, they're gonna see the Blackhawks, have beat some teams they probably shouldn't have beat, and they're gonna be a little more prepared for these teams, or these teams are gonna be a little more prepared for the Blackhawks rather. This is what you want. You want to see them compete. You don't want to see them get smashed. You don't want to throw a young player in there to just get pummeled every single night, because that's going to hurt their confidence. I mean, Adam Boqvist kind of took a hit last year when they threw him in the playoffs, and they were just running past him all game long, and he isn't necessarily quite recovered. I mean, he is a flash here or there, but that's supposed to be like your next, franchise defenseman, and he's not shown even close to that yet.
What about Kubalik?
I love Dominic Kubalik. I mean,
are you happy with what you're seeing this year, though?
Well, I mean, Kubalik, he's a big player, so he can play that that playoff style hockey, and he showed last year in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But he's streaky,
yes.
Which is a lot of the criticism that I've had with Alex DeBrincat too. Very streaky players.
Yeah.
DeBrincat will go 5-6 games without scoring a goal, and then score 2 goals, and then go 2-3 games without, and Kubalik is kind of starting to show that as well. So I'd like to see a little more consistency out of Kubalik, but I like him as a player. I like him a lot. And that's for as much criticism as I give Stan Bowman about, not being able to develop players and stuff, they've done a good job of finding these under the radar, P.S. Suter, Dominic Kubalik, these players, Kevin Lankinen. They're all free agents out of Europe. And that's where the bread is buttered. That's where they find these players, these diamonds in the rough. And they've done a pretty good job as far as, Europe goes.
Talk to me. How much credit do we have to give? Speaking of Bowman, how much credit do we have to give him? Because I was very upset with. Not a big fan of Bowman for a lot of reasons. But but the fact of the matter is now they are developing. They are giving these young guys a chance. And yes, it's during the season, so it's the season's a wash. But he is giving younger guys a chance in hopes that these guys can develop and maybe by the end of the year be. First of all, obviously you'll see what you have, but see whether you keep them, you take or get rid of them, and actually aid the veterans, the Caners, the Tays, those guys. It's actually being a good team. That takes a lot when that's not your style. When you haven't done that in the past, he kind of he flipped the script on us and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. He's never done that in the past.
Well, I mean, I'm a critic of Stan Bowman.
Me too.
Yeah, I don't like a lot of the moves he made. I don't think that the Brandon Saad move for Zadorov is okay. He's a big physical player. I get that point of it, but you really have to bring in some draft picks or some prospects when you trade away a player like that has some value, and he didn't. I mean, Zadorov is kind of young relatively, but he kind of is like a third pairing defenseman who's physical and can get out of position. And you saw it last night. There was he made a terrible play that ended up almost pretty much being a breakaway last night because he was going for a hit that he didn't get, and Lankinen bailed him out. So I don't give him too much credit other than, like I said, the European, finding these gems in Europe, but the draft, Kirby Dach was a slam dunk. He's 3rd overall. Mm-hmm. You're gonna get a good player 3rd overall, but otherwise, Boqvist was a reach, and now he's showing that he was probably a reach. Beaudin is looking okay, but he was later on in the draft or later on in the round, the first round. Ian Mitchell, after a while, after 4 years in college, has turned out to be a decent player, but he hasn't shown flashes of greatness yet, but he's a serviceable NHL player at like 23 years old. So, I would give him, a C maybe, on all this, but his moves are questionable, and you need to be making these A and B type level moves and you need to be, stealing players like you did Kubalik from LA. You need to be stealing players from other teams and making these shrewd moves and holding your ground. That's what a championship GM does, and he doesn't seem to do that enough.
Maybe he can't. That could be part of the issue. When I look at this, I'm like, so if this is development season, so what? Do we go into next year with the expectation that, okay, local players have had 2 seasons to cut their teeth, get the ice time, so you should start to be competitive come next season. But if this is the long-term project, to me, that's not keeping into perspective that you have Tays and Kane, who technically now are your veterans and they're not getting any younger. So to me, you are whittling away their talent by not putting people around them right now who can win.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know that it's even possible, no matter who the GM is, to put enough talent around them to be a winning team right now. Taves and Kane they're not going to be around here if the next Blackhawks Stanley Cup, or at least they're not going to be in this contract cycle. They've got this year and then a couple years left, and the Blackhawks are not going to be competitive for a Stanley Cup in that time. So the question then is, do you try to trade them? Well, you're going to take a loss on just about anyone that you try to trade. Like Jonathan Taves, if he was healthy, and that's a whole nother thing altogether that we could talk about, whether he's healthy or not. But even with Patrick Kane, you're going to take a loss. I mean, you might get a first draft pick. You're not going to get equal value for him. He's 32 years old. He's going to start to decline soon. You're not going to get equal value for Patrick Kane. You're just not. And plus, teams in the league know the position the Blackhawks are in. No one's going to do Stan Bowman any favors at this point in time. So, Duncan Keith, you could get something for him. Equal value, maybe, but probably not. He's older. He's like 37, 38. Like, he could be a good middle pair defenseman on a contending team, but you have to weigh here. Do you want to take a loss and get rid of Patrick Kane, or do you want him to hang around for 2 years and mentor the young kids? That's kind of where you're at. You're not going to be able to compete. You don't have the assets to give away to then bring back players that are enough to make this team a Stanley Cup team. Maybe a playoff team, sure, but does a first round exit in the playoffs, is that, it doesn't, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't give away young assets or any important assets to get, to the first round of the playoffs and get stomped by some team who's way better than you.
That's interesting that you said that you don't think that they could get a haul for Patrick Kane. I mean, I know he's still 32-ish, 32. Yeah, actually, 32. But his style of play is congruent with the way the NHL is now. It's not the early 2000s where you're a lot more physical. It's still a lot more speed now. And he's a guy who's, although he's not as fast as he was, he's still pretty darn fast, and he's still pretty darn electric. And what are your thoughts of them getting rid of him? Because if you want to do a complete rebuild, and if this is what you want to do, not saying the Hawks do, but if you do, you got to give away your best assets to get a haul in return. And you're telling me that you don't think that Patrick Kane will get you a haul in return because of his age. But wouldn't that be the smart thing to do, to try to get, because as the deadline draws closer, teams that need one more gun, that's a hell of a gun you're getting right there. If you can trade for Patrick Kane, and teams who are one player away, and Patrick Kane's not just a player, as we all know, they'll overpay at the end. There's a premium as the trade deadline gets closer. You don't think that the Blackhawks can get quite a few prospects and maybe even a young player for Patrick Kane?
Well, to say they're not going to get a haul is relative. Okay. They would get some talent back. They would get some something back that's would be important for the future. But to say that they're going to get equal value, a player that's going to be the top,
MVP of the league,
MVP of the league, best player in the the USA program has ever seen. Like, you're not going to get something like that back. You're going to get some hopes and some dreams, and maybe some draft picks, and maybe they turn out. But we've seen with the Blackhawks, they don't develop players very well. So very likely you get a first round, maybe a late first round draft pick or middle first round draft pick that never equates to anything. And then you get, maybe a young player who's okay, maybe, top 6, maybe middle 6 player, maybe a couple of players. But the effect that Patrick Kane has on a game, you're not going to get that in return. You're not going to get anything close to that in return, probably. So you would get a haul. You would probably get something that could be pieces for the future. But and as his contract gets later and later, plus you're probably going to have to retain some salary, because there aren't many teams out there that can handle $10.5 million a year, and he's got 2 years left on that deal. So they're going to probably have to retain some and not get equal value. Is it worth it? Maybe. That's for Stan to decide. I don't know that, you'd have to really come to me with a big deal and something that's very impressive. Am I listening? Sure. I'm listening to everything, to everything coming in that doesn't have Kirby Doc on there
as a request. And that's, and actually it's a good point either way, because I do agree with you. You're not going to get in return what you have in Patrick Kane. You're just not. And, to me, hockey is a lot like baseball, that, you don't know where your prospects, what they're going to turn into. It's rare that you get somebody who's ice ready, like put you out there, like Patrick was ready. So they struck, they caught lightning in a bottle with him. We could probably say that about, obviously like the Penguins, with Crosby. When you get a player like that, it's like lightning in a bottle. And at that time, they put all the right pieces, and you had all these pieces that worked. Trying to probably duplicate that repeatedly is really difficult. So it is true. It's like, even if you trade them away, they don't get better, maybe a bit more competitive, but not better. And that's kind of a scary thing, because now I look at this and I say, I don't know when we see the Stanley Cup again. So I hope we enjoyed it while we had it. That's definitely how right now. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Because 3 Stanley Cups in 6 years,
should be 4.
You don't see that anywhere. I mean, you see that from the Patriots. You saw that from the Blackhawks. You saw a little bit from the Penguins. But other than that, you're not really seeing that. And I don't know when the next Blackhawks Stanley Cup. I don't think Stan Bowman will be here. I don't think Jeremy Carlton will be here. I don't think Taves. I don't think Keith. I don't think any of those guys are going to be here if and when we see that.
Guys, we're joined by Jeff Osborn for another couple moments from the Rink official right here on Shawn and Maya on Sports Zone Chicago. How much is Kirby Doc's injury affecting him? How much is he missing this development year with guys his age?
Mm-hmm.
I think he was developing well above his curve, or what we thought his curve would be. I mean, if you look at the 3rd overall pick this year, he's not even really, doing anything. Kirby Doc was one of the better players for the Blackhawks last year, and in the playoffs, maybe their best player. Mm-hmm. So it's hurting for sure. They could use him out there, and because they're hurting down the middle for sure. With Jonathan Toews and Kirby Doc, that's your 1-2 center there. Dylan Strome may not even be an NHL center. They prefer to play him on the wing, but they have to play him at center now. Philip Kurashev, okay, but they can't win any faceoffs. They have one guy on that team that has a faceoff percentage above 50%, and that's David Kampf, who's their 4th line center. It's so bad that they have to start him when they go to overtime. They start him to win the faceoff if he can win it, which he hasn't really done. And then they send him right off and put someone else out there in his place, because he's not good enough to really be playing in overtime, but they don't have anyone else that can win the faceoff that can get him to get him the puck to start off overtime. So yeah, they're really weak up the middle, and that hurts any team.
Hey guys, he's Jeff Osborn. Do me a favor. Great stuff today, man. We appreciate your time, but do us a favor, let everyone know where they can find you and your work online.
Yeah, www.the-rink.com. I'm at Puck and Hostel. You can find all of our stuff at the Rink Official on Twitter. We have separate divisions for several teams. We covered Avalanche, we cover Seattle Kraken, we covering all kinds of teams now. So head over there, check our stuff out, sign up for the site, or follow our Twitter accounts. And thanks for having me.
As always, man, we appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.
All right, now, guys.